We are beings of anger. We were designed this way, forged this way, by our history or lineage, by the choice of others, by the will of the Emperor, with the agreement of his son, the angel, our father. For anger is necessary, and we have so many layers, built one upon the other, stacked like bricks to form a mighty tower of our rage, our fury. It starts at our birth and continues to grow more calcified with each year, each stage. It is our armor, and it is our spur. It is our weapon, and it is our curse. Sometimes I remember the tapestry of my life, intertwined in ways that did not happen, could not happen. My dreams are a struggle sometimes. At others they are a clear pathway, a straight road, but always vivid and potent. I find it difficult to sleep outside my sarcophagus. I find it impossible not to dream when within it. I am not strange amongst my kind in this regard. This harkens back to the first time, of course. For us, it all begins in the sarcophagus. Our new bodies, our new lives, our new dreams, our new duty. For I am a son of Sanguinius, and his blood flows through my veins. I am an Astartes of the Blood Angels. My dreams often take me back to that moment, the moment I knew I would be a Blood Angel, or that I would die trying to become one. The moment my brother died. It all happened so quickly. We were stood atop one of the many crags of our red world, up high to see our prey. Alas, as I leaned forward, I slipped. I should have plunged to my death down into the red sands hundreds of meters below. Instead, Luca's face passed mine as he leapt and grabbed at me and hauled me back to safety. But in this he overbalanced, teetering at the edge on his tiptoes before failing his battle with gravity and plunging over the edge himself. I scrabbled forward only to watch his face get smaller as his arms fumbled in the air. But he did not thrash. His face was almost calm, placid. He made a choice, but he was at peace with his decision. It was Luca's wish, always his greatest dream, to be one of the Sky Warriors. He would not go a day without proclaiming it. So bold was he that soon none doubted it. The day of his sacrifice was the day the sky chariots proclaimed the time of challenge had come, and the pilgrimages to Angel's Fall would begin. The irony. I told my father of the events of the day, and packed only that which I would need to travel the Rad Deserts to Angel's Fall. My mother was silent. My father merely nodded his agreement. The dream had to be made real if Luca's memory was to be upheld. He understood. Despite me only being a boy, he understood. Those days were hard. I was scrawny, yet strong, but burned and blackened by the sun and the sand. I was only barely recognizable as human then. The trials were unlike anything I had ever experienced. So bloody, so brutal, so uncompromising. A mere 50 of us were chosen, out of all of the hundreds who came, of those who survived those bloody days. But the fire of Luca was with me. I had somehow caught it when he grabbed me, when he saved me. His fire passed to me. His anger joined my own, and it burned all at which we threw it. It is how we pass the trials against those larger or faster, those older or stronger. We beat them down with our joined rage. More and more trials and tests continued within the fortress of the Blood Angels. We were all agog at the magic of the chapter then, being little more than feral nomadic plains people. But we were not given time to ponder. The training was intense and often deadly. All the while we, the denizens of Baal, were small and often misshapen, pocked or affected by the horrors of existence on Baal. Yet the trainers were all statuesque, chiseled demigods who seemed like animated marble masterpieces. They were so noble of bearing, so handsome, so perfect. None of us aspirants could understand how we would turn into things such as they. But eventually we learned. The final stage that triggered our gene seed would be the last and most daunting trial. For we would all be injected with the blood of the Primarch Sanguinius and then placed in life-supporting sarcophagi for a full year to permit the change to take effect. As stated, I was scrawny and misshapen, as were we all, so you can imagine the changes were drastic, took time, and were excruciating. Our bodies were changed slowly over that year. Our bones lengthened, our muscle mass exploded, our skins became calm and clear, and our very facial structures altered. Endless months of slow agony and endless screaming. The kind of screaming that makes your throat and even lungs burn, and your head feels it is about to burst through the lava-hot sensation being chowed to it by the nerves. Such pain, without escape. But the pain was not the only bedfellow locked into our sarcophagi with us. There were the dreams. Dreams of beauty, worlds so various and splendid that it strikes one dumb. Visions of the crusade, and the angel himself, our father, Sanguinius. Nightmares of betrayal and siege and final failure, of battle and of death. For with the blood and its changing ways, also come the memories of our Primarch Sanguinius, his struggles, his joys, his victories, and his final death at the hands of the arch-traitor, Horus Lupercal. The images, the dreams, the memories, the pain, the change, the year, locked away. You go through the midst of madness, its deepest, darkest well, only then to rise and go through to the other side. All the while the angel is there. From the second the blood is transmitted, he is there. For it is the angel, his memory, his spirit, that meets us at the end of this journey, welcomes us back to the light of sanity, oft just before the sarcophagus is opened. Not all survive the ordeal. Many an aspirant has passed their last seconds enclosed in a sarcophagus. None have ever gone through the experience easily. All have, at least once in all of that time, wished for it to be over, irrespective of how. When that lid is finally lifted, slid off by a coterie of sanguinary priests, what comes out does not even mildly resemble that which went in, either physically, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually. When I awoke, I was calm, and greeted those who exhumed me as brothers. I soon looked upon my new visage, the perfect form, the incredible height and power, the clear skin, the golden hair. Yet my mind had changed as much as my body. My interior now matched my exterior. In every single way, I had been born anew. Few talk of it, few acknowledge it. The rage inside that box, not just due to the inherited feelings of our gene father, not only due to the curse of our seed and the subsequent curse from the forces of the enemy, no. Also simply by being locked in a box and left in agony for a year, being shut away in the dark with nothing but pain and majesty. Like a thousand-folded blade, these layers of anger were not only added, but hardened, forged into our very souls. Our life had been pain, our emperor had been betrayed, and our father slain. The bright dream of a utopia stolen, the knowledge that the people of Baal were left in our misery just to provide better candidates, the knowledge that we would know no other joy than to fight and then die for the emperor, our people, and our chapter. We sacrifice our humanity, are placed amongst our people for one reason alone: to defend them. Rage. We are the directed rage of the father betrayed, the angel slain, a dream destroyed, a people in danger. I, Rubio Misaro, captain of the Blood Angels, a true son of Sanguinius, will never cease in my vigil, nor would any of my brethren Astartes of the Blood Angels. For without us, without the Blood Angels, without our constant vigil, without our constant war, without our constant rage, surely Imperium Nihilis, nearly a full half of the Imperium of Man, would fall. Welcome, gentle listener. I'm Baldermort, and I wish to introduce you to the forces and factions of the Warhammer 40k universe. Today, finally, we discuss one of the most romantically tragic, most intensely adored of all of the factions, the Sons of Sanguinius. The ninth of the Legiones Astartes, the Blood Angels. The Blood Angels have always been one of the greatest of the Emperor's legions of the Adeptus Astartes. Their constant struggle against their brutal nature, epitomized by the Red Thirst and the Black Rage, make them the most steadfast and mentally strong of all standard Space Marines. The Blood Angels are almost incorruptible, even when compared to their brother Astartes, as every hour of every day they must resist the urge that comes with their gene seed. The urge to kill and tear and drink the blood of their enemies. The urge to unshackle themselves from discipline and sanity, and wade into the berserk frenzy that haunts their every waking moment. Only through resisting temptation can one say that one has shown character and strength. This very act, the resisting of temptation, is the furnace by which the soul is steeled. The Blood Angels endure the furnace of the Red Thirst and the Black Rage every second of every day. Yet the character of the Blood Angels, with only a few exceptions, has remained stalwart for over 10,000 years. But here is the ultimate rub: time. Even the mightiest cliff can be eroded by the gentle lap of the waves given enough time. And thus the fate of even the most iron-willed Blood Angels is always a battle, not only against their urges, but against time. All of the Blood of Sanguinius know that they will inevitably succumb to one or both of these curses, and their lives of honor, endurance, and sacrifice will be washed away in a tide of rage that will reduce them to ravening beasts. So the Blood Angels are also the most reckless and aggressive of all of the Loyalist legions. For compared to this horror, this fate of their last moments besmirching a lifetime of control and honor, death holds no fear and can be a blessing from the Emperor of Man. So now that I have set the scene, let us delve into the existing wisdom, the existing lore. To quote the angelic host, the Blood Angels have always been staunch defenders of the Imperium, yet for all their accomplishments they suffer from a fatal flaw. The Blood Angels carry an inner darkness that they must strive constantly to resist. It is this struggle that defines them, as much in their most glorious moments of victory as in their darkest hours of despair. Created during the legendary First Founding, the Blood Angels occupied the vanguard of the Great Crusade, aiding the Emperor in his bid to reunite humanity's colonies across the stars. Even then, their deeds were heroic, the Legion's battle brothers exemplifying the best that the Adeptus Astartes had to offer. The Blood Angels' accomplishments only reached new heights after they were reunited with their Primarch, Sanguinius. Angel-winged, beautiful in both body and mind, Sanguinius was arguably the greatest of his father's sons. Sanguinius' glory was that of a demigod, for he was a mighty warrior and an inspiring leader, and his sons followed him with unquestioning devotion. all through the days of the Great Crusade and into the mad darkness of the Horus Heresy, the Blood Angels fought at their Primarch's side. Inspired by Sanguinius' divine presence, the Blood Angels remained staunch in the Emperor's defense to the very end. Their bolters blazed from the ramparts of the Imperial Palace even as the War Master came to seize his father's throne. And the Blood Angels were amongst the first loyalists to know of Chaos's defeat when Horus fell to the Emperor's wrath. For all their heroics, that conflict was to cost the Blood Angels dear. In the final desperate attack upon Horus's battle barge, the Vengeful Spirit, Sanguinius was slain in battle with the War Master himself. His death was but one of many blows that the Imperium suffered on that dreadful day. Yet for the Blood Angels it was the most tragic by far. Sanguinius' sons shared a uniquely potent bond with their gene-sire, and his violent end scarred the Blood Angels in both flesh and spirit. It was the death of the Primarch that is believed to have triggered the onset of the Red Thirst, a terrible flaw within the Legion's gene seed. This curse spread slowly through the Blood Angels and their successor chapters. It tainted them with madness in the millennia that followed, becoming a sorrowful secret that undermined their every valorous deed. The Blood Angels and their successor chapters are renowned for their willingness to charge headlong into the guns of the foe. They face down the most suicidal odds, and their hunger for engaging in hand-to-hand combat is well known. Some have judged the Blood Angels over-eager for battle, calling them foolhardy, ill-disciplined, or even tainted. The truth is both more tragic and far more noble. The flaw caused by their Primarch's death is twofold. Its more common aspect is the excess of rage and violence known as the Red Thirst. It is a mark of shame to give in to this curse, and in any but the direst of circumstances. Consequently, the chapter's battle brothers continually strive to master the rage inside and embody the noble ideals of their fallen Primarch. Yet no amount of self-control can save the sons of Sanguinius from the terrible madness known as the Black Rage. On the eve before a battle, a Blood Angel may find himself gripped by apocalyptic visions. The sanity of the afflicted is shattered by a sudden sensory bombardment that plunges him into a spiral of blood madness, from which death is the only release. It is almost inevitable that this fate will eventually overtake every Blood Angel. Its onset more a matter of when than if. In the face of this stark reality, each battle brother seeks to know a glorious death in battle, rather than face the slow decline into bestial madness. The Blood Angels' heritage is not altogether a sorrowful one. They carry much of Sanguinius' grace and nobility within themselves, and echo his physical perfection. The Primarch's spiritual might also flows in his descendants' veins, its potency only increasing as the millennia pass. The Blood Angels are thus numbered amongst the most psychically gifted of all the Space Marine chapters. The power of the Blood Angels' librarians flows from the chapter's conflicted duality. One moment it will manifest itself in angelic miracles, the next in savage explosions of bloodthirsty brutality. Blood Angels' librarians can easily use their minds to shield the innocent from danger, as they can to exsanguinate their enemies in sudden storms of gore. It is to the Blood Angels' credit that these formidable psychic abilities remain under their control and are used purely for the good of the Imperium. Good intentions only go so far, however, especially in a time as dark as this. For all their nobility, the Blood Angels and their successor chapters are in decline. Each year brings a deepening of the madness, a worsening of the curse within their blood. Among some successor chapters, this phenomenon is especially pronounced, for their gene seed was harvested at a time when the flaw had already become far advanced. Tales abound of whole chapters slipping slowly into blood-mad insanity, edging ever closer to the precipice as their inner darkness gains control. Names such as the Knights of Blood or the Crimson Swords have gone down in infamy, declared renegade by the Adeptus Terra, or completely wiped out amid unwinnable conflicts of their own creation. Indeed, were any chapter to have fallen to the ruinous powers, it should surely have been the Blood Angels. Their genetic curse, coupled with their powers of warcraft, would seem to make them prime candidates. There are those amongst the Inquisition who are only too quick to make such assertions, and who watch the chapter keenly for signs of their inevitable fall. Yet the Blood Angels have remained loyal for 10,000 years. They harbour no more intent towards heresy now than they did on the day the War Master fell from grace. Though they still stand proud, the Blood Angels are far from untouched by the creeping degeneration that afflicts their successors. The chapter must work harder and harder to maintain its fighting strength, for new recruits are lost just as frequently to the Black Rage as are veterans. Meanwhile, more battle brothers than ever choose glorious deaths over ignominious madness, their reckless sacrifices leaving those who remain spread thinner still. Worse is the intensifying of the Black Rage. Once the chapter would lose perhaps a handful of battle brothers to this phenomenon in any given campaign. In recent years, it has not been unheard of for whole formations to plunge into their madness. To quote, Origins of the Blood Angels. The Space Marine Legions were the creations of the Emperor of Mankind. This deific being created incredible warriors to help him conquer the galaxy. Amongst these legions were the Blood Angels, who from their earliest days fought staunchly in the service of Emperor and Primarch both. Like all the great Space Marine legions, the Blood Angels were born from the dying flames of the Age of Strife. The risen Emperor had united the warring factions of Terra, yet his vision did not end with one world, or even with the solar system in which it lay. His goal was nothing less than the reunification of scattered mankind, to bring the sundered worlds and realms of humanity under a single, beneficent rule. To do this, he would need a mighty army, an army unlike any the galaxy had ever seen, an army whose warriors knew no other loyalty than to their Emperor, and whose bodies and minds were hardened to withstand unceasing war. The Emperor had long ago refined the techniques of genetic manipulation, and he set these skills to work once again, forging 20 extraordinary super warriors to be his generals in the coming campaign. Thus were born the Primarchs of the Space Marine Legions, incredible beings whose martial powers were to be second only to those of the Emperor himself. Yet, as with all great labours, the genesis of the Space Marines did not go entirely according to design. The Emperor's plans for his Primarchs was to be undone even before it had properly begun. Without warning, the Primarchs disappeared, scattered throughout the galaxy by an unknown force. Though the loss of the Primarchs was a bitter blow, the Emperor was not dismayed for long. They could not be recreated, but their genetic records remained, and from these the Emperor created the mighty Space Marine Legions, the armies he had always intended his Primarchs to lead. It was at the head of these legions that the Emperor began his great crusade in earnest. Setting out from Terra, the Emperor led the Space Marines on a glorious campaign that sought to restore mankind to greatness. No foe could withstand the onslaught of the Emperor's crusade. Despots, aliens, and demons all fell to the relentless advance of the legions. Worlds previously enslaved and terrorized flocking willingly to the banner of the nascent Imperium. It was in the course of the Great Crusade that the lost Primarchs were at last reunited with their Emperor, taking up their rightful places as the masters of the legions. No mere warriors were the Primarchs. They were also shrewd and canny leaders of men, and under their command the righteous might of the Space Marines increased 100-fold. So it was that the forces of the Emperor surged onwards as never before, an unstoppable projection of humanity's will. New battlefronts opened up across the galaxy, and worlds were acclaimed by the thousand. Through it all, the Blood Angels and their Primarch, Sanguinis, fought at the Emperor's side, serving as honor guard to their beloved creator. Driven by fiery temperament, the Blood Angels swiftly earned a fearsome reputation as shock troops, which came to feed a rivalry between them and the World Eater's Legion. Yet, in truth, the Blood Angels were never as berserk as the World Eaters, for the wise influence of Sanguinis tempered their bloodlust. Though he was yet in the early days of his legend, Sanguinius was thought to be the noblest of the Primarchs, and was ever deep in the Emperor's council. Even Horus, proud war master of the Great Crusade and Primarch of the Lunar Wolves, sensed a purity of spirit in Sanguinius that he could never match, a oneness with their father that no other Primarch could ever hope to approach. While many of his brothers fought the Great Crusade solely out of the joy of battle, Sanguinius fought to secure the golden era of peace and prosperity that would surely follow. His vision was the Emperor's, a hope of mankind united in peace and prosperity. Alas, it was not to be. The Horus Heresy. Just as it seemed the Emperor's dream could be fulfilled, the Great Crusade ended in the most terrible and unimaginable way. It came to pass that Horus, trusted war master of the Great Crusade, turned his back upon the Emperor and embraced the shifting glories of the Chaos Gods. To him rallied nearly half of the armies of mankind, including many of the Space Marine legions. On what should have been the brink of a new age of glory, humanity was plunged into the bleakest war it had ever known. Untold billions of lives were sacrificed upon the altar of battle, every soul feeding the rapacious hunger of the Chaos Gods. If the Great Crusade was mankind's finest hour, then the Horus Heresy was surely its blackest. Brother fought brother, with quarter neither offered nor given. Heroes were slain, worlds were burned, and the Emperor's dream of peace was shattered forever. In the midst of this darkness, the Blood Angels never wavered, but held true at the Emperor's side. The rivalry with the World Eaters now escalated into bitter enmity, as the two legions found themselves serving different masters, and their confrontations were to be amongst the hardest fought of that bloodiest of wars. It is said that Horus hated and feared Sanguinius more than any of his brothers, and wove many strategies to ensnare or slay him, though all failed. Yet for all of the might of the Emperor, for every effort of Sanguinius and the remaining loyalist Primarchs, the forces of Horus drove all before them. In too short a time, the Emperor of mankind was assailed within his great palace on Terra. With only a comparative handful of loyal warriors at his side, he confronted the hosts of demons, traitors, and corrupted space marines that fought at the treacherous War Master's side. The Blood Angels led the defense of the Emperor's palace, never once losing heart, despite the terrible odds stacking against them. Alongside their battle brothers of the Imperial Fist Legion, the valorous yet overmatched soldiers of the Imperial Army, and the grim Adeptus Custodes, the Blood Angels held the walls of that final bastion. Yet the war could not be won, or even survived, through defense alone. In a final desperate gambit, the Emperor took the fight to Horus's great battle barge, the Vengeful Spirit, teleporting into the heart of the enemy stronghold with the Blood Angels and Imperial Fists at his side. Only Space Marines could have withstood the horrors of that demon-haunted starship, and even they were sorely pressed. Sanguinius was swiftly separated from his comrades and, so the legends tell, was brought through artifice before the treacherous Horus. The War Master offered Sanguinius one final chance to renounce the Emperor, to join with Horus and his inevitable victory. Yet the Primarch of the Blood Angels held true and refused. Thus rejected, Horus flew into rage and attacked him. Even at the peak of his powers, Sanguinius could not have hoped to prevail against the monster Horus had become, and the Primarch was weary and wounded from his travails on Terra. When the Emperor at last entered Horus's sanctum, he found his rebellious War Master standing above Sanguinius's broken, bleeding corpse. In the battle that followed, Horus was finally vanquished, though the Emperor too was cast down near to death. There are many tales told of this final battle. Though the exact facts are long lost, one detail remains constant in all of the recitations through all the millennia since. Despite the Emperor's great power, he could never have bested Horus had not the blade of Sanguinius wrought a chink in the War Master's armor. The Imperium was forever changed in the wake of Horus's defeat. No longer would the beneficent Emperor take a martial role in mankind's defense. for only the life-giving machineries of the Golden Throne now sustained his shattered body. The reconstruction of his empire and the final rout of the traitor forces would now fall to the surviving royalist primarchs. Men such as Rogel Dawn of the Imperial Fists and Reboot Gulliman of the Ultramarines. Indeed, it was Gulliman who would have the greatest lasting effect upon the now leaderless Blood Angels. Through the Codex Astartes, that great treatise on the restructuring and ordering of the Space Marines intended to prevent forever the danger of mass rebellion on the scale seen during the Heresy, Gulliman's legacy would reshape the Blood Angels Legion into the chapters that defend the Imperium to this day. Mankind had suffered, and the Imperium was nearly destroyed. Yet the Blood Angels would bear the pain longer and more deeply than most. Sanguinis' death heralded the awakening of the Red Thirst, and its curse would change the nature of the chapter forever. To quote, Cradle of Angels. The Blood Angels are shaped not only by the personality and deeds of Sanguinius, but also by the nature of their chapter planet, Baal. Few worlds in the entire Imperium could have as devastating an impact on the human soul as Baal and its inhabited moons, Baal Prime and Baal Secundus. In ancient days, Baal and its moons had Earth-like atmospheres. Baal itself was a world of rust-red deserts, but its moons were paradises for mortal men, where folk lived in harmony with nature and pursued lives of ease and freedom. The people of Baal became exceptional artisans and spent their time creating mighty monuments, carving the mountains themselves into statues of their rulers and their gods. They even ventured onto the surface of desolate Baal itself, leaving colonies and breathtaking edifices in their wake. No one knows exactly what happened to change this idyllic state of affairs. All that is certain is that during the fearful events that marked the downfall of human society and the end of the dark age of technology, the moons of Baal suffered terribly. Ancient weapons of terrifying potency were unleashed. Cities became plains of smouldering glass. Lush grasslands became polluted deserts. Seas became poisoned lakes of toxic sludge. The inhabitants of Baal died in their millions, and it looks as though humanity might become extinct in the Baal system. But somehow, people survived. They clung precariously to life on the edges of the radioactive deserts. They became scavengers, picking through the scattered bones of their once great civilization. In the dark time that followed the collapse of all order, some became worse than scavengers, and in their desperation turned to cannibalism. Over the course of the following centuries, the accumulated chemical and radioactive toxins that built up in the survivors' bodies led to them devolving into mutants, shambling parodies of men, of the men their forefathers had once been. There were some who held on to their humanity and preserved a semblance of sane behavior, but they were the embattled few amongst a new and savage culture that evolved amid the ruins of the old. The only social unit left was the tribe. For humans and mutant cannibal alike, the only folk that they could rely upon were their own kin. The people of the Baal system became nomads, shifting from place to place, picking the ruins clean, warring to preserve the spoils they had gathered. The tribes fought constant wars, webs of alliances ever shifting as each tribe strove for supremacy and survival. Extinction awaited the slow and the weak. Where once the moons had been near paradises, now they were living hells. For the few surviving humans, existence was a struggle. They wandered the surface in ramshackle vehicles, hoping that their patched-together radiation suits would save them, praying they would never hear the ominous telltale click of their rad counters. For a time it seemed that humanity was doomed, that soon there would only be an endless desert ruled over by the feuding mutant tribes. Then, out of the star-strewn heavens, came hope. After the Emperor created the Primarchs, the forces of chaos made off with the infants and carried them through the warp. Unable to destroy the Primarchs because of the powerful protections laid on them by the Emperor, the demonic powers nonetheless did their best to alter the Emperor's work to their own evil ends. Thus it was that even the best of the Emperor's creation became corrupted at the outset. The pod that housed Sanguinius came to rest upon Baal Secundus, at the palace now known as Angel's Fall. The infant Primarch was found by one of the wandering tribes of humans who called themselves the Folk of Pure Blood, or simply the Blood. The young Sanguinius' life almost came to an end then and there, for the touch of chaos had changed him. Tiny vestigial wings, like those of an angel, emerged from his back. Many wanted to kill him as a mutant, though in all other ways he was a perfect child. Eventually innate compassion prevailed, and he was spared. The infant Sanguinius was a prodigy. He grew quickly and learned everything his parents could teach him. After 3 weeks, Sanguinius was as large as a child of 3 years. It is said that at this age he slew a giant fire scorpion with his bare hands, and that he never once showed fear at the colossal beast's onset. As Sanguinius grew, his wings grew also, changing from vestigial things into mighty pinions that could bear him aloft upon the desert air. By the time he was a year old, he looked and acted like a man in his youthful prime. He could walk without a radsuit in the most poisonous of Baal Secundus' deserts, and could shatter massive boulders with a single blow of his outstretched hand. In the use of all weapons he soon surpassed his teachers. When a wandering band of mutants surprised the tribe, Sanguinius slew them all, although they numbered over 100. This was the first time the members of the Blood had ever seen him truly angry, for he felt his comrades' lives were in danger. When the blood rage overtook him, Sanguinius was indeed terrible to behold. His mighty Primarch powers awoke to fullness, and a nimbus of light played around his head. Sanguinius soon rose to the leadership of the Blood, and under his guidance they rolled back the mutant tide. For a time mankind had a respite on the moon of Baal Secundus. Sanguinius was worshipped as a god by his followers, who felt that he could once again create a paradise in that dreadful land. Yet it was shortly thereafter that fate intervened once more. The Emperor had been questing across the galaxy in search of his lost sons, and his incredible psychic powers led him to Baal. His ship landed at the Conclave of the Blood, and he walked straight to Sanguinius' abode. Some among the Primarchs are said to have fought against the Emperor when first they met, but this was not the case with Sanguinius. He immediately recognized the Emperor for who he was, and bent his knee before the Lord of mankind. The Emperor raised him up, looked upon his people, and saw that they were fair and noble. The best of the warriors he offered to transform into space marines. The others were to be honorably left behind to defend mankind's birthright upon Baal Secundus. Thus were the Blood Angels and their Primarch finally made whole. They joined the Emperor's fleet and sailed across the Sea of Stars to participate in the Great Crusade. Since the time of Sanguinius, the Blood Angels have recruited first among the tribes of the Blood on Baal Secundus and Baal Prime, where a colony was established shortly after the time of the Horus Heresy. Youths from the Blood take part in games and tournaments, facing many hazards as they race across the desert to fight and do battle against one another. These contests are held once per generation at Angel's Fall, where a mighty statue of Sanguinius now observes the proceedings. Traditionally, the time of challenge is announced by heralds, who visit each tribe in flying chariots. Contestants must make their way to Angel's Fall across the Rad Deserts, a process that weeds out the weakest. The hazards of the desert are many, and it takes a youth of extraordinary skill and courage to even reach the place of challenge. Once there, they must vie for the 50 or so places that are available. Those who succeed are taken up in the sky chariots. Those who fail are left behind, either to guard the place of testing or to make their way back to their own tribes. Those youths accepted as aspirants are taken to the Blood Angels' fortress monastery on Baal itself. There, they see great wonders. They look for the first time on the unmasked faces of their future brother Space Marines, and note with some consternation their sharp eye teeth and sleekly beautiful features. It has to be said that the recruits are far from handsome at this stage. Most aspirants bear marks of their hard living. It is impossible for an ordinary man to dwell on those barren moons and not feel the terrible kiss of radiation. Some are marked by stigmata, while most are short and stunted, their growth stifled by malnutrition, their flesh disfigured by lesions and carcinomas. As the aspirants are left to observe vigil in the great chapel of the chapter, before drinking from the sanguinary chalice brought to them by the sanguinary priests, slumber soon overtakes them, and the aspirants are borne by servitors to the apothecarian, where the gene seed of Sanguinius is implanted in their recumbent bodies. From the apothecarian, the aspirants are taken to the hall of sarcophagi, and each is placed within a mighty golden sarcophagus. Life support nodes are attached to them, and for the next year, they are fed intravenously with a mixture of nutrients and the blood of Sanguinius, while the gene seed does its work. Many of the aspirants die at this stage, their bodies unable to cope with the strain of the changes that now overtake them. Those who live grow swift and true, echoing the rapid growth of their Primarch. They put on muscle mass and acquire the extra internal organs that mark a true Space Marine. At this time, too, they have strange dreams, for the gene seed carries with it the memories of Sanguinius. Thus does the Primarch's essence begin to permeate the souls of his warriors. Afterwards, when sleeping, and sometimes when awake, these dreams return to haunt the Blood Angels. When the aspirants emerge from their sarcophagi, they are forever changed. They are tall, strong, and superhumanly powerful. Their reconstructed bodies and features have taken on a beauty that echoes that of their angelic forebear. Their senses are keener, their muscles stronger than tempered steel. They are ready to begin their training as Space Marines. The Heritage of Sanguinius. Every Space Marine chapter is defined by the legacy of their Primarch. Through their gene seed, these mighty beings would shape their sons' bodies, while through teachings and philosophy they would influence their minds. Yet none amongst the Primarchs would have as profound an effect upon their progeny as did Sanguinius. Sanguinius was always a visionary. From his earliest days he desired to lead his people to a new and better life. When he joined the Great Crusade, he did not abandon this vision, but instead brought it to a far greater arena. He wanted to improve the lot of all mankind, and see a lasting end to the strife brought on by the collapse of human civilization at the close of the Dark Age of technology. Sanguinius was not merely blessed with a futuristic philosophy, he was also gifted with the power of prophecy, able to see visions of what may lay ahead. It is almost certain that he knew he was going to his death when he boarded Horus's battle barge, and yet he went anyway. Whether Sanguinius did this out of fatalism or loyalty to the Emperor is a point often debated by imperial theologians, but it is not in doubt amongst the Blood Angels. They will say that he went out of duty, knowing full well what the outcome would be. The outlook of Sanguinius did much to shape his chapter. There is a powerful mystical streak to many of the Blood Angels' traditions, and this can only have come from the spiritual teachings of the Winged Primarch. Sanguinius also indoctrinated his followers with a strong belief that things can be changed for the better. After all, the process of transforming a starving scavenger into a tall, proud and handsome warrior is living proof of the tenet that courage, refinement and nobility can be shaped from the crudest clay. This belief can be seen in all things the Blood Angels do. They strive for perfection. Their works of art are things of beauty. Their martial disciplines are practiced unceasingly. Yet as the flaw within their gene seed has become more evident, this belief in change has turned into an altogether darker thing. They see within it the evidence of mankind's capacity for folly and destruction. Their doctrines are permeated with a sense of mortality and the fallen greatness of man. The Blood Angels are among the longest lived of all the Space Marines. One of the peculiarities of their aberrant gene seed is that it has vastly increased the lifespan of those who bear it. So it is not unheard of for Blood Angels to live for 1,000 years. Indeed, the current commander of the chapter, Dante, is known to have lived for more than a millennia, and is almost certainly far older. These vastly extended lifespans allow the Blood Angels to perfect their techniques in art as well as in war. Providing blood madness does not take them, they have centuries in which to hone the disciplines in which they turn their mind. This accounts for the fact that the Blood Angels' armor and banners are amongst the most ornate of all the Space Marine chapters. Perhaps the strangest of all the chapter's traditions is the habit of sleeping whenever possible in the sarcophagi used to create them. In recent years, the Sanguinary priests have created filters to purify the blood of their brother Space Marines. While the Blood Angels sleep in their sarcophagi, their blood is cleansed and purified. The chapter thus hopes to slow the process of degeneration brought on by the flaw. Although it is known to but a few, The Blood Angels are a dying chapter, for they are afflicted with the dreadful curse known as the Flaw. Each time battle looms, they must court the twin dangers of the Red Thirst and the monstrous Black Rage. The former robs the Blood Angels of their nobility, clouding their minds with an irresistible blood madness that reduces them to little more than wild beasts. The latter is far worse, however, for once the Black Rage claims the son of Sanguinius, they are lost forever, body and soul. Some claim that the root of the flaw lies with Sanguinius' mutated nature. They imply that he must have been the worst afflicted by the powers of chaos when the infant Primarchs were stolen away from the Emperor's laboratory on Terra. Other scholars claim that the flaw lies in the process used to create new generations of Blood Angels. They assert that it has crept in because the Blood Angels use the process known as insanguination to activate the gene seed. All Space Marine chapters use gene seed to trigger and control the process that transforms an ordinary mortal into a Space Marine. The gene seed contains viral machines that rebuild the body according to the biological template contained within, and impart a flicker of the glory of the Primarch that sired each chapter. However, at the time when the Space Marine legions were created, the process was still highly experimental, and many different ways of controlling and managing the transformation were tried. In the Blood Angels' case, the chosen method was insanguination. This process was originally triggered by injecting the aspirants with tiny samples of their Primarch's own blood, some of which was preserved within the Red Grail after Sanguinius' death. The living blood could not be kept this way for long, and so it was injected into the veins of the sanguinary priests. In this way, they became living hosts to the power of Sanguinius. To this day, drinking the blood of the assembled sanguinary priests from the Red Grail is part of the induction ritual for all Blood Angel priests. It is from these same priests that the blood is taken to begin the transformation of aspirants into Space Marines. It is possible that over the countless generations since the time of the Horus Heresy, these cells have mutated, slowly at first but more quickly in recent years, and that errors in replication have resulted in the flaw. Whatever the reason for the flaw, it is certain that its hold over the Blood Angels has become stronger, and their tendency towards self-destructive madness ever greater. Yet in this dark age of the Imperium comes a slither of hope for the sons of Sanguinius in the form of the Primaris Space Marines. Side note, alas, since the time of the writing of the Codex for the 8th edition Blood Angels, it has now transpired that the curse has not been solved, and Belisarius' call lied. The Primaris also experience the flaw. Deep within the psyche of every Blood Angel is a destructive yearning, a battle fury and blood hunger that must be held in abeyance in every waking moment. Few battle brothers can hold this red thirst in check unceasingly. It is far from unknown for Blood Angels to temporarily succumb to its lure at the height of battle. The red thirst is the Blood Angels' darkest secret and greatest curse, but it is also their greatest salvation, for it brings with it a humility and understanding of their own failings, which makes them truly the most noble of the Space Marines. The fate of those unfortunates overtaken completely by the Red Thirst is known only to the chapter itself. There have been incidents when the Blood Angels have been stationed on distant worlds where members of the local populace have gone missing only to turn up later drained of blood. It is possible that this is the work of cultists seeking to discredit the chapter. It may even be that some of the more superstitious local citizens have taken to offering up sacrifices to their godlike visitors. It may also be possible that these folk have been killed by Blood Angels overcome by the Red Thirst. The Black Rage. Blood Angels are unique amongst the Space Marines in that deeply ingrained in their gene seed is the encoded experience of their Primarch, and most deeply imprinted of all is the memory of Sanguinius' final battle with Horus. Sometimes, on the eve of battle, an event or circumstance will trigger this race memory, and the battle brother's mind is suddenly wrenched into the distant past. The Black Rage overcomes the Blood Angel as the memories and consciousness of Sanguinius intrude upon his mind, and dire events 10,000 years old flood into the present. And please do be aware that I have already performed an entry for the Black Rage and the Death Company, and I would urge you to go and view that for further details. End quote. But it is impossible to discuss the Blood Angels after the Indomitus Crusade. Impossible to understand them unless one understands the very basics of the background and importance of their chapter master, Dante. For he is effectively the second most important and powerful person in the Imperium. He is the regent of an entire half Imperium Nihilis, the dark segment of the Imperium of humanity. To quote, Commander Dante, Lord of the Host, Regent of Imperium Nihilis. The Blood Angels are ruled over by Commander Dante, Lord of the Host and bringer of Sanguinius' light. Dante is truly a legend, for his deeds span many long centuries. He is thought by many to be the oldest living space marine. Even Captain Lysander of the Imperial Fists, who was lost in the eddies and tides of the warp for 1,000 years, cannot recall a time when Dante did not reign supreme over the Blood Angels. None can deny the scope of Dante's campaign experience. He has fought battles uncounted, orchestrated innumerable major campaigns and seized bloody victory on worlds as far-flung as Ultima Macaria and star-swept Janal. It is said that no man has visited as many of the Imperium's million worlds as Dante, and he has come to each in full raiment of war, at the head of a glorious and vengeful host. There are former worlds of the Imperium, now lost to the darkness of the void or the ravages of the foe, that only Dante remembers. He alone of all living warriors survives to mourn and avenge them. To his fellow chapter masters, Dante is an exemplar of the fearlessness, dedication and strategic genius that speak to the heart of the Space Marine's never-ending mission. To the hard-pressed generals and marshals of the Imperial Guard, he is a thrice welcomed and honoured ally in the forefront of mankind's defence. To the common soldiers and citizens of the Imperium, Dante is nothing less than a saviour, a golden god who descends from heaven on wings of fire. So long now has Dante lived that his exploits have passed into myth. It is now impossible to say how many orc heads Dante cleaved at the liberation of Canal, for the tally grows greater each time the story is recounted. Did Dante truly defeat the bloodthirster Scarbrand before the gates of Pandemonium? Did he really face the Night Lord warband of Gol Ashkal alone, killing each of his 13 would-be assassins single-handed and without the benefit of his armour or weapons? Only Dante himself can say with certainty, yet he speaks not on such events, no matter how much the exaggerated nature of such tales must rankle with his warrior's pride. The Imperium needs heroes, needs hope in these dark times, and the commander of the Blood Angels keeps his peace so he may do his part to prevent mankind from losing heart. Yet for all his successes, or perhaps because of it, Dante has grown weary of his labours. He has lived far longer than he should, and the burden of centuries grows ever weightier. Only one thing prevents Dante succumbing to ennui. Recorded in the Scrolls of Sanguinius are the Primarch's visions of a great battle to overshadow all others, where one golden warrior will stand between his emperor and the darkness. For many generations of the Blood Angels, these prophecies were read as Sanguinius' foreknowledge of his own fate, yet through some instinct, possibly a lingering trace of his Primarch's fabled far-seeing eye, Dante believes otherwise. He has always known that one day the defense of the Emperor would rest in his hands, and he would have to be ready for that greatest of duties. Now it seems to the Lord of the Blood Angels that perhaps that time has come. Commander Dante never expected to see his chapter's final days, yet he faced them unbowed. He never expected to see a Primarch returned, yet he knelt before Abud Gilliman with a thankful heart. When Gilliman named Dante as his regent of the Imperium Nihilis, the Lord of Baal felt the hand of fate land heavily upon him. With the fury of the Great Rift unleashed, a darkness looms more terrible than any in the Imperium's history. The Blood Angels now stand before the darkness with the throne of terror at their backs, and will have to fight like never before. Coupled with the revitalizing purpose of this new duty is the fresh hope brought by the Primera Space Marines, the possibility that perhaps the Sons of Sanguinis will not burn out like a guttering candle. It is said amongst the Blood Angels that Commander Dante has never stood taller, even as he does so in the face of such terrible adversity. The Regent of the Imperium Nihilis has sworn to purge his dark new realm of the taint of chaos, even should it take another 1,000 years and more. After all, it is amidst the darkest night that such golden angels shine the brightest. End quote. Please be aware that there is so much more to tell. Very soon, I hope, I will be able to go into the full history of Dante, and be able to go into why Reboot Guilliman, why he would have given power, such a burden, to one space marine. For I have many suspicions, all of which we will cover in another entry soon. But is the chapter on the verge of a new age? Is there invigoration with the Primaris Marines, and the more active contact from the very spirit of their Primarch, Sanguinius the Angel, added to the increased sightings of the Sanguinor? The control of the Black Rage, no matter how short a time, has been done, but not even just once, but twice. Limates, Guardian of the Lost, and Calistarius, who became Mephiston, Lord of Death. For Limates barely controls the Rage, but does so enough to function as chaplain of the Death Company. But Calistarius threw out the Black Rage entire. He defeated it, is what is said. Hence now 2 pathways have been forged for the first time ever. Has a new age dawned for the Blood Angels and the entire 9th Legion chapters? Have they already drunk deep enough from the chalice of woe? Are they actually on the cusp of a metamorphosis as profound as the one all go through to become Blood Angels in the first instance? As an entire legion, they have stared destruction in the eye and come out the other side. For the tendrils of High Fleet Leviathan Stockbal, the home world of the Blood Angels. As the Tyranids gathered in the Shield Worlds, the Blood Angels chapter master Dante called out to all of the sons of Sanguinius, all successor chapters of the Blood. And he was not left wanting. For almost the entire strength of every Blood Angel arrived in time to defend the body of their Primarch, Sanguinius, whose crypt is in the chapter fortress of the Blood Angels on Baal. Some state that this is why the Tyranids concentrated on Baal at all, to gain his genetic material. But who can truly know the mind of the great Devourer, if it has one at all? Dante is the regent of Imperium Nihilis, and 2 of the Angels of the Blood have somehow managed to defeat, or at least limit, the dreaded curse carried by all of the sons of Sanguinius, the Red Thirst and the Black Rage. As with the 4-minute mile, or any other accomplishment, to know that it can be done, to have that ceiling shattered, makes it all the more likely that others of the blood of Sanguinius may well master this arcane art and defeat the floor. If they can do that, if they can finally beat their rage, then there will be nothing that they cannot do. For should the day come that they can unleash their rage at will, and then fetter it again, then all of the powers of the warp, all of the various Xenos threats, all need look to not only their laurels, but to their very survival. Captain Rubio Mesaro stood from his place next to an ancient and now wrecked land raider, his countenance somber, his bearing regal, as he proceeded to rejoin his men waiting quietly at the edge of the bowl. He looked each man in the eye as he spoke. Now we finish this. We take our wrath to the very heart of this incursion, this invasion. We strike at the dragon in his lair. There was no cheer from his gathered marines. There were but stoic nods of assent. Hours passed, and the battle had been intense, the marines pushing further and further into a last conurbation that had not been purified and pacified. Heading towards the center of the disruption, the thing that had caused so many forces of the Dark Powers to its cancerous collapsion. Yet the enemy would not go down so easily. Demons streamed towards the Blood Angels' ranks despite all the pinpoint accuracy of their bolt shots culling the throng. Yet still they would hit. Unlike many other chapters, other legions, who would perhaps fall back in orderly squads or stand their ground and fire until they had no further choice, not the sons of Sanguinius. The Blood Angels countercharged. A tactical squad, no chainswords or jump packs, they charged nonetheless. Using their bolters as precise bludgeons and all of the strength of their armor and skill, they fought forward. The red demons in front of them met them with all of the force and rage of an ocean. Yet, they fell back under the punishment these red-clad marines were dishing out to them. Every sword swing parried, every barb blocked, with counter-strikes that destroyed the beings first time, every time. But they were just the wake, not the prow. At the tip of the V, the top of their spear point, was Captain Rubio. With his power sword crackling blue energy and his Infernus pistol blazing, Captain Rubio Massaro strode forward, never missing a step, never slowing, never relenting. Like a god of war, he felled all before him. In the center of it all, his rhythm set his mind a blank. The captain heard what at first seemed like the beginnings of an auditory hallucination. But then it became clearer. A voice in his mind. One he had never heard before, yet recognized immediately. My curse grows within you all. One day, I will have you all. One day you will be lost within your rage so much that you walk into my realm, from which you will never escape. One day the Blood Angels will fight for the Blood God. One day the Blood Angels will collect skulls for the Skull Throne. Give in. Be the first. But you will not be alone, for every one of your brothers will join you in their trickles and then their droves. My curse grows within you. Be the first, and you will be the mightiest. Can you hear me when I think, while I destroy your minions? As you hear, so are you heard. Then I shall give my response. How dare you? How dare you put out such a fetid fare as if it were a banquet? Before you stands a son of the angel, a son of Sanguinius, and I know thee. Cabanda, proclaimed minion servant Lickspittle of Corn. Yea, but Lickspittle is too high an epithet for thee. You are an echo of an echo. You are nothing. I shall explain it to thee once alone. For there is something you cannot understand, cannot fathom, cannot grasp. Not if I gave you all of the experiences, the lives, the achievements, the senses of every being who ever lived, from the first sea beings who gazed up into the first sun, to the final sentients that will witness the last star burn cold. Not if I gave you 1,000,000 lifetimes to ponder these experiences. Not if I gave you until the end of time could you possibly understand. You think yourself a mighty demon prince, yet I know thee for what thou art. You protest of power and infallibility, but if that were so, why hound my door with your begging bowl for supplication and service? I know you to be an echo of an echo, a dream of a being that calls itself a god, but in reality it is nothing more than a collection of the misery of everyone's bad days. We have something you will never experience, never possess. We are the sons of the angels, aye, the sons of the Emperor's design. Despite having greatness running through our veins, we are but human. And we have something you will never, ever have. A choice. So I say to thee and your master and all of the cohorts of his minions, I say it but once and once alone, for now and for all time. Get ye hence, take thyself from my door, demon. For I choose to be a true son of the angel, and I will never bow to the likes of thee. And come what may, I am at peace with this decision.